Hey, y'all, and welcome to the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. I'm Susan. This is Homestead Happenings podcast. Y'all, we have a coffee bar set up over here, and all you have to do is go grab a cup of coffee or something warm to drink, like tea or hot chocolate. Grab your comfy chair and a blanket, and sit down while we talk about Snowmageddon 2026 and what worked and what didn't. And this is episode 26. I do have some notes here, and I will be going through some of my notes, and then we're going to talk about the holes in our emergency supplies. So stick around till the end. You want to hear this episode. It might help you in your struggle to survive a winter storm like we've had. Across our country, almost 2 million people had to deal with Snowmageddon 2026, which is almost unheard of all at once. And then on top of that, we had a snowclone or cyclone in the ocean on our east coast that threw tons and tons of snow, especially on North Carolina, who's already struggling from a previous storm that wiped out communities with flash flooding. So we've dealt with a lot of things in our country in the past 2 to 3 years or longer, and it's concerning. It really is concerning. So I wanted to talk about our preps that we did prior to this storm coming in. We had notice, so we were able to get things prepared ahead of time. So, what are some of the things that we did? First of all, on my channel, you will see me in that kitchen 90% of the time working on some kind of food prep. Sorry, folks, I have a dry throat this morning. Um, so, having plenty of meat on hand, that's your protein source, would be frozen meats, uh, canned meats that you buy from the store, home canned meats, and lunch meats, things like that. That would be your protein source. And then you would have vegetables. Of course, we have canned vegetables and beans on our pantry. But if the power is out, how are we going to heat all this? We do have some backup heat sources that I didn't get into this year because we didn't have to use them, but we do have them in place, like sterno cans that you can set up in your oven and boil a pot of water on top of it, or a can of soup, or a can of beans, or something like that in your oven. Um, we also have a camp stove that we could set up outside. You don't want to use it indoors, but we could use it outside or on our back porch where we have an airflow to heat food and cook food with. We also have outdoor barbecue grills and smokers and so forth that if we could get to them, we could utilize them as well, depending on the temperature outside. We also keep dry goods, we keep flour, we keep sugar, we keep all the staples, and we keep rice and um, noodles and things like that, so we could make a meal rather quickly. One of the quick meals that we could have made was take some pasta, a can of soup of any sort, or one of your cream of anything soup mixes that you have in your pantry, or an Alfredo sauce mix, and some canned mixed vegetables or peas, anything like that, and make a tuna casserole. But you make it in a pot instead of a casserole dish. So that would have been a good high carb, protein rich meal that we could have had. And I try to plan on meals that will last us at least 2 days, because if the power goes out, we'll have something to eat the next day. So whenever I'm preparing, I'm thinking always ahead of what I can do to prepare us for power outages and, those um, unseen, unforeseen things that happen every single day. We don't know when it's going to happen or when disaster is going to strike. So having those preps done is extremely important. Um, we did a fresh veggies prep prior to this storm, which was celery and carrots. You can also do cucumbers. You can do bell peppers, anything like that, and a homemade dip. I always keep um, homemade dip mixes and sour cream on hand for a dip. And those were vegetables that we could actually eat at a meal or we could have them as snacks. And they were low carb and they were healthy for us. We're diabetics, so that was healthy. We also took care of our chickens. I did a pre cooked rice with warming herbs for our chickens, using up some rice in our pantry that had bugs in it, and I didn't throw them away. I saved them for an emergency, cooked up a great big pot, and that lasts several days, feeding them that in between their regular feed. That was to help keep their body temperatures up, and it worked really well. And then when the power came back on, of course, I got into our beans and rice and some um, dried herbs and vegetables and stuff that I had in my pantry to continue that during the really cold days. We had some negative temperatures, and we have to keep their body temperatures up, and that's one way we do it, especially before they go to bed at night. So we want to make sure that their combs are not getting freezer bite, that their feet are fine, and they're not getting sopping wet. And so we kept our birds indoors during those really frigid days until that temperature started warming up, and then we allowed them to roam outside. You want to make sure you have plenty of warm blankets and quilts. This door here, it is our front door, and it has a lined curtain over it, one of those blackout curtains. We also have a wool blanket on our side door that we use to come in and out of the most to kind of curb the draft. We also put up a plastic shower curtain over our main window with some painter's tape, and we could have gotten some of those rings that you put on shower curtain rods and done the same thing and just hung it there to kind of block that wind that might come through that window that needs to be resealed. You can use quilts or blankets on your floors to keep your floors warm, your feet warm, because you lose most of your body heat through your feet and your head. So, if you have a long term power outage, you want to have some good wool socks on hand. You also want to have some wool stocking caps or something that you can put on your head to kind of help your body preserve that heat. Also, throw rugs. I used throw rugs around my house, and that helps, especially in places where you're going to sit for any period of time, like in your bathroom. You don't want to have cold feet while you're sitting on the toilet. I know it sounds funny, but that's the truth. And, if you're sitting in a chair like I am, you can have a little throw rug in front of your chair so that your feet are not directly on a cold floor. Now, some of y'all have carpeting, and that's wonderful. We don't have carpeting, so I have to think outside the box for these things. And then you want to be able to have warm clothing, and you want to have warm clothing that you can layer, and you can layer it and be comfortable in it. You don't want it too tight on you that you feel like you're suffocating. So those are things that we did to be prepared. Um, we also made sure that all of our laundry was done prior to this storm hitting. All the bedding was fresh on the beds. Everything was ready to go, including for our animals or indoor pets. Uh, Drinking water. We pulled, couldn't tell you how many gallons of water I pulled. And my husband also pulled water in case he had to lug water out to the chickens. Thankfully, our outside spigots did not freeze, and we were able to get fresh water for them out there. But we had water for drinking, water for our animals inside, water for the animals outside, for flushing, for washing dishes, and for washing our hands. And I used wet washcloths with soapy water in a bag to wash our hands with, so we had those ready and prepared in case the power did go out. And they'll last a couple of days like that, 2 or 3 days. I did put some tea tree oil in there to kind of combat um, mildew, and I also put a little bit of vinegar in there, so you don't want to use that on any kind of granite top. Um, we had backup heat sources, and thankfully so, because my husband never did get our wall heater hooked up to the propane tank outside. We have a big propane tank that fuels our central heat and air, and we wanted to hook it to that. But we also have bottles of propane on hand, and we had a third source, which was a radiation attachment that you put on top of those propane tanks. Now, they're not safe inside, but we have airflow. We made sure that we had airflow, and we also made sure that we had a carbon monoxide detector where we could find it. Um, we also made sure we had paper products like toilet paper and paper towels. No, we didn't run to the store and buy eggs, milk, and butter and bread and those things like everybody else does. But we did have those on hand. I have powdered milk on hand for a backup source for milk. You can have canned evaporated milk on hand. Um, we have chickens, so we always have fresh eggs, and I can bake loaves of bread in advance. Now, we did buy some bread before the storm hit and lunch meat, but it did not last through the 10 or 11 days that we had to go before we could even get out of our driveway. You want to have some type of entertainment if you have, especially if you have children, but to bust the boredom, you can have puzzles, that you work yourself, not the little Game Boy puzzles, but real physical puzzles. Uh, Game boards or cards, books, have art supplies and crafts available. Housework, which was really tough, is to make sure that you have all your clothes done pre storm, and that uh, whatever housework you have to do, like I had to manually wash dishes, so I pulled water in two of my stock pots that I use for canning, and I had one that was soapy water and one that was clean water, so I could wash our dishes as we went and keep our kitchen clean. So housework is very, very important. So you want to make sure you're keeping up on as much of that as possible. And then flock care. We made sure that our flocks were safe. I mentioned this before. They did not come out during the really cold days, during the storm. They did not come out of their coops so that they were safe and warm, but we did give them extra feed. My husband went out 3 to 4 times a day and fed them each time he went out, checked their waters, make sure that they had fresh drinking water available to them. And then I was making the rice or the bean and rice mix to give them a supplement to kind of keep their body temperatures up. So you want to do all of these things, especially if you're a homesteader, whether it is taking care of cattle or any other animal that you have. That is a must do job. It doesn't matter what the weather is. What didn't work for our homestead? Our power outage was only 10 hours, but some in our area lost power for 7 or more days. I just cannot imagine being without power that long, especially in the winter months. So we want to make sure that we have enough propane on hand. So we're going to tap into that big tank out there for the wall unit. And my husband's talking about eventually taking out our picture window in our living room and putting an outside fireplace on our double wide mobile home. Maybe like one of those stoves, the pellet stoves type thing, or an actual fireplace. We're going to contact somebody that does masonry and talk to them and see what would be the best thing for us to do and be cost effective. So we're looking at alternate backup sources because something could fail with one of these propane tanks and we'd be sitting here without any heat. Um, we also needed to get a marine battery for a power source unit that we have. We have a small one, and I don't, here it is. Hang on a second. This is a Ryobi. I've shown this before. It's got a power plug here. It's got two USB ports here. It's got a, a light source. It's got a power button there, and it hooks into one of the little Ryobi batteries. So you want to make sure your batteries are charged, you know, all your flashlights and everything that's chargeable or rechargeable is done. Make sure that your weather radio is ready and to go. Make sure that you have all your candles and your heating sources, yeah, and your lighting sources like we do. We have oil lamps back here that are filled and are ready to go in case we need them. But you want to make sure that you have enough for several days of heat and power. Now, these little power sources will die over time. That's why we want to have this backup um, unit that we have that hooks up to a marine battery. We want to have that available to us because I noticed our little batteries didn't last very long. So that was one of our issues that we um, really need to work on. Okay. Uh, and I talked about the marine battery, the backup heat sources. I am going into baking. We don't usually eat a lot of bread around the homestead, but over this past week we ate a lot of bread, and it was store bought bread. And y'all, there's a lot of ingredients in that store bought bread that I don't want in my body. And I'm thinking I can make bread. I can do it leisurely and have maybe a few loaves in the freezer, some dinner rolls, or whatever I need to do to have bread on hand for an emergency situation. And I want to be able to make it myself. So I'm gonna invest in getting a uh, food mill grinder for wheat berries and things like that. I want a manual one, and I would like to have an electric one as well. Um, so if the power's out, I can still grind my flour. We are a homestead that is on grid, but we do things off grid as well, and there's a reason behind it. And so having home baked breads on hand that like sourdough and things like that is going to be healthier for us as diabetics and healthier for us, period. I did a lot of dishes. 3 meals a day with just two people was a lot of dishes. I can't imagine a house full of people. So we're going to invest in some paper plates, paper cups, and plastic utensils. And it'll be for easy cleanup, and we can just toss them in the trash. I don't like doing that. I am really anti consumerism, but in some circumstances, I could see where that would come in handy. And we're going to make a tote for our emergency supplies so that we can just pull it out and have it ready to go. We had a few sick pet accidents. So having paper towels on hand came in handy, but when they throw up on your rugs and you know they're going to have to be washed, you're going to have a garbage bag or something to store it in until you can get it washed and dried if your power is out. Um, I want to replenish our stocks of MREs, that's meals ready to eat, and these are not necessarily uh, MREs that you think of. These are soups ready to eat and freezer meals ready to eat, um, ready to eat canned goods that I can make a meal out of in a hurry. Now we did buy. Well, we didn't buy it. We actually won. Got to move this. We won this a few years ago, and it has these little packets in there, and these last 25 years stored properly. And we did dig into this. Now, did I like the meals? Not necessarily. Uh, I can't get the lid back on it. I'll get it on there in a minute. Um, we did an Alfredo packet out of one of these, and it was supposed to be 4 servings, and I cooked it up, and I had to go in my pantry and find noodles to add to it because it was like soup. It just literally didn't come together. They didn't have enough noodles in there. And I was thinking, okay, we've got a whole bucket of this and we have no idea if it's going to be enough to feed us or not. So these are nice to have on hand for emergencies, but just be prepared that you might have to add to whatever they put in that package. Now, the protein shake was okay, but it had sugar in it. Um, they had oatmeal packs in there, and they had like spaghetti marinara and stuff. Nothing with meat was in this bucket that we won. Okay, um, you want to make sure, especially if you're using those little infrared attachments that go on the propane tanks. They're not meant for indoors, but if you have a carbon monoxide detector and you have ample airflow, you can crack a window somewhere in your house near this to make sure that you have airflow in your house, getting fresh air into the room. We do that. We have doggy doors, so we cracked a doggy door so we had fresh air coming in. So those are things, you know, that didn't really work, but we made them work. But we definitely want to get another carbon monoxide detector. We have one in our main hallway, but we need one in our master bedroom. That end of the house needs a detector too, because if we're sleeping at night and we've got this thing running to keep the heat going, we need to be safe. It is our third, that was our third backup. Regular backup is the regular heat and air. Then we have the propane heater on the wall, would be the secondary, and then this would be our last resort kind of thing. So we're going to actually make a fourth one if we add on a fireplace to our home. Having enough sand on hand. We had a little bitty bag of sand. We had ice melt. We had rock salt. The rock salt and the ice melt did absolutely nothing. We had a sheet of ice out there. We still have a sheet of ice out there as of today's filming. And it was worse because we got rain and then it froze over again. So it's just really, really bad out there. But sand you can get traction with your vehicle and with your feet. And so we use sand going out to the coops because we don't want to put salt down and we sure don't want to put that ice melt down with the chemicals for our flocks. Um, so the ice is the danger, and the trek to the coops was pure ice. So we want to make sure we have not just a little bag of sand, but maybe a couple of garbage cans of sand near our back door where we can go in it and get sand and put it on our driveway and carry it with us and sprinkle it up to the coops to make our trek so much easier. Keeping up with the chores inside and outside was a problem during this time period. Energy, the energy to go out in cold weather up to the coops and back wore my husband out. And me keeping up with cooking and cleaning 3 meals a day and keeping up with cleaning up behind the pets in the house was a chore that wore me out. I'm a senior citizen. This is our golden years, and y'all, it's going to get worse as we age, so we need to be prepared as much as possible. The aftermath was lots of laundry and reassessing our stockpiles. And here's some of the holes in our plan that we found. And I'm going to make this short because I know we're already over 24 minutes. Um, we need paper plates. That's the bottom line. And I'm not going to get the styrofoam plates. I'm going to get the actual paper plates. I have paper plate holders, and we can use those, and they're biodegradable. We need the marine battery for our emergency backup power unit. We need a second carbon monoxide detector. And I would like to get another one of these Ryobi charging ports, one or two more of these, because they really do come in handy, and some extra batteries. And also having clay pots and saucers and bricks on hand. I do have one set that I can make emergency heating source that I could put into like the bathroom, on the counter, or in the kitchen, somewhere in there to keep that room heated, or near the back door. And a manual clock. Who thought about a manual clock? But I did. I'd like to know what time it is. If I can't get on my cell phone and look, I need to know what time it is. And we have a manual clock in our kitchen that has died. And I was thinking, one of those little wind up clocks would be great if we can find them. All right, folks. Y'all let me know in comments if you notice any other holes that I need to fill in my checklist, and what you did to stay warm and safe during Snowmaggedon 2026. Our schedule is full videos Monday and Friday. Tuesday is podcast day. The third Thursday of every month is our live stream. I drop shorts here and there, and I connect with you on the community tab on my days off with videos. I hope that you are enjoying our podcast and that you are enjoying the regular content of our programming. This year is really focusing in on homesteading and becoming resourceful, becoming the resourceful homesteader. Be blessed and a blessing. Here's some content I think you might like. Thank you for visiting our homestead. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, hype, and share to help our small channel grow. See you next time for more simple living, frugal tips, and farmyard fun.